So today let's explore these donated electronic driver fluorescent fixtures. Big thanks for the donation, and let's explore what's inside of these electronic drivers. One of the fixtures also has a battery backup, a battery inverter and a rechargeable battery pack in it. But first let's explore the electronic drivers. Each of these is for two 58 watt tubes, so before opening it let's put some tubes into it and test it. I have some guinea pigs here. Do you prefer warm white, cool white or daylight? 5200 lumens. So the tubes are in. Nice. And now let's try to test it. Giving it my dodgy test plug, and let's plug it in and power it. And it runs. Nice. This is the one without the battery backup. Of course this is a bit cumbersome, it won't fit my bench. It's 1.5 meters long. Measuring the consumption using my DIY watt meter, and it shows 108.2 watts. And it fluctuates very slightly. And these electronic drivers typically drive the tubes at a bit lower power than the magnetic ballasts. And this one says 2 times 50 watts. And the energy efficiency index is A2. Here's the wiring, and they're in series. 58 watts, 2 times, warm start, 220 to 240 volts, almost to unity power factor 0.96. And I guess if I remove one of the tubes, the other one will go out because it's in series. Yes. So if one tube fails, the entire thing stops running. This is a disadvantage in comparison to a double tube magnetic ballast fixture. But it's more efficient and flickerless. Let's try to measure the voltage on one of the tubes. And the waveform, of course, using a 100 times high voltage probe. 46 kHz. It says 10 volts per division, but it's actually 100. Because it's expecting a times 10 probe. It doesn't have a setting for 100 times. And the peak voltage seems about 180 volts. But of course it's not easy to measure because I don't know which terminal is the cold end without the high frequency high voltage on it. So the measurement might be skewed if I'm connecting the ground of the oscilloscope to the hot end. And of course this oscilloscope is not grounded, it's battery powered. The other tube is similar but a bit less voltage it seems. Or maybe I'm connecting the probe wrong. Let's try to touch it using just the tip of the probe without connecting the ground. And this is actually a big no-no, but let's try it. This is the hot end. And this is the cold end, I guess, with less voltage on it. This is the center tap, sort of in the middle. I don't have access to any reference point which would be the rectified main smoothing capacitor, so the ground of the oscilloscope is just capacitively coupled, but it seems these two terminals have the lowest voltage on them, these two higher, and these two highest, so this is the hot end. It's not symmetrical, so I guess it's driven just by a half bridge of transistors, not a full bridge, which makes sense, it's not super powerful. I'm trying to test the other one, which seems to be a bit more complex with the backup. It has a 5-terminal socket here. One is grounded probably. 2 wires went to the inverter and 2 wires to the backup inverter. Let's see what happens if I try to power just the main inverter here. It preheats, one of the tubes dimly blinks and it shuts down. And the tubes are good, I tested them in the other fixture. Is the main inverter faulty, or does the backup inverter require the supply voltage for it to bridge the connection to the main one? This one is using a 4.8 volt, 1.7 amp hour nickel cadmium battery pack. It has the minus input, some sort of a switching input which is actually bridged using this jumper wire. And it has an LED indication. And it's for an 18 to 58 watt tube. Open circuit voltage 2000 volts, bloody hell. And it's showing a lamp with a starter and a magnetic ballast. It's weird. This one was meant for a magnetic ballast fixture, but they botched it on an electronic one. Here's the live going via the inductor to the lamp, and then the connection to the starter actually goes through this one, so it's probably disconnecting the starter when it's running on a battery, and it's also disconnecting the neutral from one of the pins when it's running on a battery. And this one only backs up one of the tubes in the fixture, and it definitely doesn't run it at its full power. I guess it's just a fraction of this. And it does not have access to this pin of the lamp, so it's probably running the lamp in a cold cathode mode, which of course quickly destroys the emissive layer, but in a backup mode it probably runs just several hours a year, so you can get away with it. Now let's try to connect the mains to both inverters. Well, I can hear a relay clicking in the backup inverter. It sort of tried to start up but still shut down. And the LED is lighting up super dimly. And now it's working. Maybe it needed a little bit of time to recharge the batteries a bit for the control circuitry to operate. I unplugged it, plugging it back in. It's cycling. It's not working properly now. I moved the tubes a bit, so it might be just a poor contact in the sockets. Now it's all working nicely. I connected just the backup inverter to mains for several hours to see if the battery maybe charges, and if I unplug it now, it dimly blinks. It seems to back up this tube, but it doesn't work properly. The battery isn't charged, or even more likely it's completely rotten by now. Maybe it requires more time to charge because it charges at a low current, but more likely it's rotten by age or by long continuous trickle charging. Measuring the battery, it's 4.5 volts, and it goes down. It does hold some charge, but probably has a very high internal impedance because it's old. It doesn't seem to hold a charge. When I try to charge it, it goes up quickly and it goes to about 6 volts and then it stops at 6 volts and it's trying to charge it, but it's probably rotten now. But anyway, this one is working, so I might keep it as a cool studio light. And this one is questionable. Maybe the inverter is intermittent, or sometimes the backup inverter fails to bridge the main inverter to the tube, or maybe some poor contact in the sockets. But anyway, in either case, the battery is probably bad already. So let's take a look inside the inverter from this one. Marking the connections. Now the inverter is out and this thing has no screws. The top just clicked on it, and here's the board, which also clicked into the housing. There's the plastic insulation, and let's take a closer look at it. And strangely, the transistors are not mounted on the housing as a heatsink. There are some SMD components, especially this control chip, but most of it is through hole here. The mains comes in here. There are two fuses, some Y interference suppression capacitor, two X capacitors for interference suppression, and some common mode interference suppression inductor, the bridge rectifier made of discrete diodes, and there is a power factor correction, an active one, with this ferrite inductor, and probably a transistor for switching it. It's a typical boost converter power factor correction, and this capacitor for 170 nano is before the power factor correction, and this big electrolytic capacitor goes after the power factor correction. Here's the power factor correction diode, and the inrush diode is hidden under the transformer. And the fluorescent inverter is a half bridge with two transistors, and this capacitive divider creating the center point. Some small discrete transistor and a capacitor. And here's the output inductor. Some capacitors. This is the heater transformer and the resonant capacitor. This one is rated 1600 volts. It produces a high voltage to strike the tubes by a series resonance with this transformer. Of course, if it was a single tube inverter, you could get the heater current from connecting the capacitor, the resonant capacitor, through the filaments. But in an inverter with two tubes, it's probably necessary to use a heater transformer. I guess if you put two such configurations in series, one tube starting first would throw off the resonance, so it's done in a different way. And here's the simplified schematic of it, without the control circuitry. The mains comes in via fuses, the interference filter, the bridge rectifier, this capacitor for high frequency decoupling but not smoothing. Here's the active power factor correction in a boost configuration with the switching transistor, the ultra-fast diode, and the inrush diode. The inrush diode bypasses this for the inrush, so the high inrush current doesn't saturate this inductor or damage this ultra-fast diode, which might be more sensitive to a high current spike than this slow diode. This transistor has some current sensing resistors in parallel going to the chip for current sensing. Here's the smoothing capacitor. The power factor correction probably charges it to about 380 volts. And here's the half bridge of alternately switching MOSFETs. Again, some sensing, some low resistance current sensing resistors going into the chip. And the output of the half bridge goes via the main inductor into the two tubes and the capacitive divider, removing the DC current and creating an artificial half point of the supply voltage. Initially, this startup capacitor increases the voltage by a series resonance with the inductor until the tubes are ignited. and one is bypassed by a smaller capacitor. So initially most of the high voltage is on this one strikes, and then this one strikes. It's starting one first, so it doesn't require as much voltage. And initially the cathodes are preheated using this preheat transformer with 3 secondary windings. This one heating this filament, these two in a series, and this one for this filament. The filaments are connected via some capacitors. Not sure if this resistor is to discharge the capacitors or helping the startup, or maybe to detect an open filament, because the supply voltage goes via this resistor, the filaments, and this resistor into the control circuitry. It might be an open filament detection. And here's the primary of the preheat transformer connected to the high frequency from the half bridge using this small capacitor. And after the startup, the preheat transformer primary is disconnected by turning off this transistor. That's the small TO982 package. And once the tubes are ignited, this inductor is limiting the current through them. And the control chip is probably powered either using the auxiliary winding on the active power factor correction inductor, or maybe some sort of a capacitive dropper running at high frequency via a small tiny SMD capacitor going from this point somewhere. Of course, here's the board from below. There was this thing on it, probably just a spacer. It contains the control chip here and some discrete resistors, capacitors, diodes, about 6 transistors. And these combinations of 3 capacitors in parallel are in series with the heaters. Let's take a closer look at it. There is some combination of transistors. Is this to drive the gate of the power factor correction transistor? And the control chip. And some other small transistors. And here is the output section. And of course the close-up of the control chip. There are some datasheets of it, but none of them showing an example schematic with 2 tubes. Just this. Here's the power factor correction. And the half bridge, the capacitive dropper divider powering the chip probably. The main inductor, the center point capacitive divider. The tube looks cold cathode here. I'm not sure what to think of this, but there seems to be some sort of a detection of a bad tube, and that's it. Let's try to put the ground of the oscilloscope here and the tip here, and then I will also try to measure this heater, turning it on. And the peak voltage total of 2 tubes is about 250 volts. And when I turn it on, the frequency is initially higher for the preheat. And this is the heater 5 volts per division. After the startup there is less voltage on the heater, probably coming mostly from the discharge current. And this was with one tube removed, and now with the other one removed. Again it tries and shuts down. And the tube is back. So that's this fluorescent inverter. Another piece of technology that quickly went from modern to obsolete. I'm also thinking about trying to compare the light output and power consumption to a standard inductor operation, and also its low-loss version, which is bigger, but maybe in another episode. So that's it, and if you like my videos, please consider supporting this channel on a Patreon, using the thanks button and subscribing. And big thanks to all of you who already support me, because this kind of channel really couldn't exist without you.